Hey guys, how are you all doing? This is Rob of Rule of Two Review. Welcome back to the channel, and tomorrow is the day, finally, after what feels like an eternity, we will finally see a brand new Nintendo E3 Direct and a Treehouse, and it feels great. Obviously, this video won't have too long of a shelf life, as it's going to go up in the middle of the day here on Monday, and then of course it's first thing in the morning, at least for myself, here on the west coast of the states, that the Direct will be going, so there's not a whole lot of time for this video to make too big of an impact or a splash, but it's been a busy weekend for myself, and this is just the time I had to make the video and get it posted, so hopefully a lot of you have a chance to check this out and kind of join in this last minute discussion and conversation as we go into Nintendo's E3 Direct tomorrow. So many possibilities. We've all been talking for weeks about things that could happen between Zelda stuff and Switch Pro stuff and Metroid stuff and so many other things. And in this video, I want to take one last minute focus on some potential surprises that we might see happen at their show. Of course, before we dive too much deeper into the Nintendo E3 Direct topic, I like to remind you guys I'm always trying to grow the channel here on Rule of Two Review. I am trying to cross 17,000 subscribers before the end of 2021, and I am very, very close. I upload several videos every single week, and I tend to live stream around once a week. I cover all things Nintendo and Metroid and all things gaming, so as you watch the video, if you seem to like what I'm doing and what you hear, then hopefully you will consider subscribing to the channel. So at this point, I feel like I've talked about the Switch Pro and Breath of the Wild 2 and Metroid and Bayonetta and stuff kind of ad nauseum leading up to their show tomorrow. But I haven't spent as much time as I really would have liked to on actual potential surprises and things that we don't really know about, or games that we really haven't been talking about that could happen at their show, because we have to be guaranteed at least one fairly sizable Nintendo first-party surprise that would show up or be announced at their Direct tomorrow, right? It just seems like the obvious thing. Of course, we expect something like a Smash Brothers character, or maybe even two, to be announced tomorrow. I do feel like one is bare minimum going to happen, but I also feel like there's a chance they're going to give us both of the final two fighters tomorrow, which will be very cool and exciting if that does happen, especially if they're cool fighters. But what about other Nintendo franchises that we haven't seen come back, like in a long time? I've kind of briefly mentioned vaguely a couple of franchises, but I want to take some time to actually discuss them today. Now, there is a recent potential revelation about some Zelda and some GameStop stuff that might speak to stuff we see tomorrow, and I'll touch on that at the end. But as far as other franchises and things that I hope to see show up as a surprise, one of the most obvious ones you guys have heard me say here and there is Pikmin 4. I really feel like the Pikmin franchise is not done, and obviously this conversation goes way back to 2015 when Miyamoto randomly threw out, during the Wii U years by the way, that the next Pikmin game, Pikmin 4, was being made, and it was in fact almost done, and that we should see it soon, but Pikmin 4 literally never showed up. Some people thought Hey Pikmin on the 3DS was the game he was referring to, but after that game launched, Nintendo did confirm that that wasn't the game, and that a different Pikmin game should be what they were making. We got Pikmin 3 Deluxe released as a Wii U port last year on the Switch, and that's cool and fine, and I mean, that's one of my favorite Nintendo games ever made, so it's cool that they ported it to the Switch. But what about a new game, man? What about an actual Pikmin 4, a follow-up to the ideas and concepts introduced in Pikmin 3, and something taking advantage of the Switch hardware? There's a great opportunity there, and I honestly have believed this entire time that Pikmin 4 is a game still being made by Nintendo, and so I just feel like this could be the time in the year that they finally want to bring the Pikmin franchise back with a new title. And so, yeah, tomorrow at the Direct, I think it's one of those kind of random offshoot surprise Nintendo first-party announcements that we might actually see. Similar to how when Luigi's Mansion 3 was announced, it was like, oh snap, like a new Luigi's Mansion game. Who saw that coming? And here it is. I kind of think Pikmin 4 could fill a similar role. So I'm really, really hoping to see a surprise Pikmin announcement tomorrow. Now, a franchise and a studio that I don't talk about enough on this channel, which is surprising because of how much I love them, is Monolith and the Xenoblade franchise. And it's unique because many of you may know I'm not really a big RPG or JRPG guy. I'm not a super big fan of the genre. There's only a few games I've ever enjoyed in that genre. But some of those games are the Xenoblade games. I love that entire franchise. Xenoblade Chronicles, Xenoblade X, and Chronicles 2. I love them all. I kind of prefer them in the order that they released. So Xenoblade Chronicles 2 would be my least favorite of them all, but I still loved it. Like, all of those games are great, and I love what Monolith does. We even know Monolith helped Nintendo a little bit with the development of the original Breath of the Wild. They might even be doing the same with Breath of the Wild 2. And Monolith has kind of been in the news over the past year or two because we know that they've been hiring for some kind of new project. And after they finished Xenoblade Chronicles 2 and then Torn of the Golden Country, we kind of assumed they moved on to something else that hopefully would be another Xenoblade game. So, would we hear from Monolith and potentially the Xenoblade franchise tomorrow at the Direct? And sure, I obviously think that there's a chance that they show up. If you think about it, there's really three main options of what they could actually show. One would be a Xenoblade Chronicles 3 that would actually be a numbered third game, Xenoblade Chronicles number 3. The other would be kind of a weird, like a Xenoblade spin-off, the way Xenoblade Chronicles X came in between the first Chronicles and Chronicles 2, and so maybe they do Xenoblade Chronicles Revenge, or Xenoblade Chronicles Here We Go Again, you know, whatever they would call that, Xenoblade Chronicles Y. Like, they might do a spin-off game, or they might be doing a completely brand new IP or a new game. I think that that's also on the table. I do think all signs have more been pointing to another Xenoblade Chronicles kind of experience or something in that franchise, and that would certainly make me very happy. I would like to see something brand new again, built for the Switch. I think that what they did with Chronicles 2 was fairly impressive, but for some reason, the original game on the Wii and then X on the Wii U felt more impressive for that hardware than Xenoblade Chronicles 2 did for the Switch, if that makes sense, right? And so I'd like to see them kind of step their game up and come back with something, I guess in my opinion, just a little bit better than Chronicles 2 as far as some kind of follow-up, whether it's a spin-off or a 3. And with E3 and the Direct happening tomorrow, I feel like Nintendo and Monolith, they just love Monolith. They love to give them free reign to make these amazing, huge JRPGs and help them with something like Zelda. So I feel like if they're ready to show their new game, that they're going to be heavily featured in the Direct tomorrow. So fingers crossed that happens. Now, I do want to touch again on Donkey Kong, and I know I have brought up and discussed Donkey Kong several times over the past few weeks, but I kind of wanted to still squeeze that into this conversation just because it's one of those quote-unquote leaks from the past few weeks that I really believe. I think there is a great chance we're going to see Donkey Kong tomorrow. And part of the reason is because it's the 40th anniversary, and part of the reason is because those leaks just kind of just make sense, right? And so featuring Donkey Kong and announcing a new game tomorrow would be a huge piece of news and make huge headlines for their E3 Direct. And, you know, I discussed this recently as well. Whether it's a 2D or a 3D game, I would be completely happy with both. I know a lot of the internet and the fans out there seem mostly excited about just a 3D game. They don't like the fact that these leaks say that it's supposed to be a 2D game. Everyone wants 3D game. And if the EPD Tokyo team is working on it, people think it would be 3D because they worked on Mario Odyssey. So I guess anything is on the table. I love 2D Donkey Kong, and whether it's a Donkey Kong Country game or something else, if it's 2D, I still feel like I'm going to love it. Nintendo clearly cares about this franchise. Donkey Kong goes back to their video game roots, and as I mentioned on a recent podcast, it's also where Mario came from, right? So being the 40th anniversary means Nintendo is probably going to want to acknowledge it and respect it, and probably release a new game to celebrate it, and obviously E3 is the time and place to do it. So it's hard for me to envision a world where their 40-minute show goes off tomorrow without showing a new Donkey Kong game. I mean, it's not a guarantee, it's just something that I personally feel and believe, and the leaks make sense to me. The leaks are out there for this reason, so hopefully there's truth to that. I would love to see it happen, and I think there's a good chance. Now, a massive potential surprise that people cannot write off for tomorrow's E3 Direct, something that I think could very much even be their one more thing, is a new Mario game. Whether it is Super Mario Odyssey 2, or if it's another just 3D adventure, something brand new featuring brand new concepts and worlds and gameplay, I think there is a chance we are finally ready to hear from the next Mario game. Remember, you guys, Mario Odyssey was 2017, so just over 4 years ago. just like with Breath of the Wild, I think that 4.5, or 5 years is a great time to hear and see from the follow-ups of these games. We already know Breath of the Wild 2 is coming, whether it's this year, next year, or whatever. That game is already being made. We've already seen it. The next Mario game, the follow-up to Odyssey, we don't know what's going on here. And the beautiful thing about Nintendo's tweet about their E3 Direct is that they say it's featuring titles mostly in 2021, which leaves that window open for huge titles that could be 2022 or beyond. So, games like Splatoon 3, Breath of the Wild 2, Metroid Prime 4, or a potential new Mario game all could fall into that category. That little phrase about mostly 2021 means any new game, no matter how big in scope it is, or how far off from release it is, has a chance at being discussed tomorrow simply because of how they phrased that tweet. And something you might have heard me say before is, I don't love Mario Odyssey. Well, that's not true. Here's the thing. I do love Mario Odyssey, but what I feel is that it's not my favorite 3D Mario game. It's actually kind of lower on my list. It's not the most exciting game to go back to once you finish it, at least for me personally. And so it's like not my favorite 3D Mario game. However, I do think that the structure of Mario Odyssey is perfect for a sequel. It is tailor-made for a sequel. New kingdoms, more moons, more things to throw Cappy on. I mean, it's just begging for a sequel. So even though I don't love Odyssey, if they announced an Odyssey 2, I would be freaking out with excitement for it and so down for that sequel. But on the flip side, I would be just as excited, if not more so, for just another brand new Mario game, like I said, featuring new concepts and new gameplay ideas. I'd almost rather them do that than make an Odyssey 2. But the great thing about Mario and the way Nintendo makes Mario games is that you really can do no wrong. Nintendo has never messed up Mario, man. Even their most uninteresting Mario games, like 3D World or like the new Super Mario games, to me, those games aren't super exciting to me. They're still very good, and they're still a lot of fun. I've enjoyed playing them, right? So if it's a new Mario game that's going to be shown at the E3 Direct tomorrow, it's going to be great, it's going to be hype, it's going to be exciting, no matter what it is. And I think that we shouldn't forget that there is a chance Nintendo could be ready to announce the next main Mario game. Now, I do want to touch on one last thing here, and this is kind of the newest piece of news or rumors that's been going around the past couple of days. In the last podcast I posted with Andre's Restart from Thursday, we discussed this a little bit because it was brand new breaking news as of the middle of the week. And because it could affect the E3 Direct tomorrow, I did want to talk about it. And it has to do with this whole Legend of Zelda GameStop poster pre-order thing that's going on. So basically what's happened is there has been these photos going out in the wild right now of people in GameStop holding these Legend of Zelda posters that seem to be celebrating or acknowledging the entire history of the Zelda franchise. And obviously you can see it here. There's imagery from all of the prior Zelda games, and there's also a new Twilight Princess looking render of a very famous Ocarina of Time art of Link, right? And so the story going around is GameStops have been given and sent these posters to potentially give out tomorrow, Tuesday, June 15th, as pre-order bonuses for some potential new Zelda game. And apparently, GameStop executives have been asking the stores to staff extra tomorrow, June 15th, for this new Zelda thing that Nintendo might be doing. That's the story going around, and it is very interesting to me. Now, I have varying levels within me of whether or not I believe this or don't believe this. Is it true? Is it a hoax? Does it make sense? Does it not make sense? I mean, I've really kind of looked inwardly to myself to kind of figure out how I feel about this. And part of it is, if you listen to that podcast, you heard me say this, but part of it is I worked as an assistant manager at GameStop for 3, almost 4 years back in the early 2000s. During the 6th generation GameCube, PS2, Xbox, which was great. I have wonderful memories of that time. It was kind of a better time in gaming, if you ask me. I prefer the way gaming was back then to today, but either way, that's neither here nor there. The point is, I have some inside experience with GameStop, and I look at what's going on with these posters, and it's like, yeah, part of me believes it, but part of me thinks this is fake. I think it would be weird that Nintendo would be doing something and announcing something Zelda-related so big that GameStop is worried about people flooding their stores. Like, that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. So the whole staffing extra thing feels a little bit weird. The poster, that's tricky for me because it very much makes sense for them to send out pre-order bonuses like a poster. And that poster looks like something very real, but it also looks like something people could fake. And we have to remember the lengths people go to fake things on the internet. I referenced on the podcast the Nintendo NX controller, the Rayman leak, the Nintendo Switch Online profiles. I mean, the Grinch leak. People go to crazy lengths to fake stuff, even in physical form, the 3D print stuff, just to pull one over on the internet. And it's entirely possible that that's what these posters are. Like, this would not be hard for someone to fake. So they could even print one of these out, go and stand inside of a GameStop and just take a picture of themselves holding it. Like, it's not hard to fake this stuff. But it also does feel kind of real too, right? And so all of this is to say, is this hinting at some major Zelda announcements at their E3 Direct tomorrow, June 15th, when GameStop is telling their stores to overstaff? Maybe. Obviously, we all think about a collection of previous games, like here's your Twilight Princess and your Wind Waker collection, or an Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask collection, or we've remade and remastered all these different games. And so go to GameStop to pre-order, pick up your poster, celebrate the 35th anniversary of Zelda. Oh, and by the way, Breath of the Wild 2, here's the date. I mean, there is a great chance that we see a whole section in their Direct tomorrow focused on The Legend of Zelda and dedicated to announcing new games and the 35th anniversary stuff. And so these posters and GameStop's plans all jive with what's supposed to happen tomorrow. It could happen. But in trying to wrap this up here, I'll just say that I'm not yet ready to entirely believe it. It's very interesting, fun stuff to see and to speculate about, and so I wanted to touch on it here as a potential quote-unquote surprise to maybe show up in their Direct tomorrow. So at this point, the countdown begins, man. We're going to have about, 15 to 20 hours between the posting of this video and the time that the show happens. It's going to be a ton of fun. I cannot wake up tomorrow morning and set up and actually watch this thing and record myself. It's going to be a blast. Fingers crossed we get all the Zelda, Metroid, and Nintendo Switch stuff that we want. Hopefully we all have a good time. And with that, this video is a wrap. Thanks, of course, as always, for tuning in. This is Rob of Rule of Two Review, and I will catch you guys in another video.